The city lights of Seoul shimmered through the evening haze, painting the Han River in strokes of gold and silver. Rachel Okafor stood at the pedestrian rail by the water, hugging her coat tighter against the cold breeze. She had come here to clear her head, nothing more. After the exhausting job rejection, the rent reminder, and the weight of loneliness pressing down like wet sand, she simply needed quiet. But from a distance, it didn't look like that. Kang Seon-woo wasn't the type of man who slowed down for anything, not traffic, not emotions, and certainly not people. But as he drove along the riverside road, something about the lone figure by the edge made him instinctively press the brakes. She wasn't leaning over dangerously, but to Seon-woo, a man whose mind cataloged threats and tragedies in seconds, it was enough. The wind tugged her braids slightly, and that posture screamed fragile. And fragile things had a way of breaking. He got out before he even thought about it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating episodes. Rachel exhaled and shut her eyes, missing the way a black Maybach coasted to a silent stop behind her. She opened them only when a deep voice spoke at her shoulder, calm but commanding. You shouldn't stand so close to the edge. She flinched, turning sharply. The man was tall, sharply dressed, and too handsome in a dangerous, untouchable kind of way. His presence carried weight, the kind that made the air feel denser. I'm just getting fresh air, Rachel managed, stepping back a little. Seon-woo's expression didn't change, but his eyes scanned her face, her trembling hands, the exhaustion she tried to hide. He misread everything, or maybe he read too deeply. You were about to jump, he said quietly. What? No. You don't have to pretend. I'm not pretending. He didn't argue. He simply reached forward and wrapped his coat around her shoulders. Rachel blinked. Why are you doing? Because I'm not letting you die tonight. She froze. The firmness, the absolute certainty in his tone. It wasn't normal. And his gaze, controlled, calculating, unnervingly intense, made her heartbeat stumble. I said I wasn't. It doesn't matter. You looked like someone who wouldn't ask for help even when they needed it. His voice softened, just a fraction. So I'm helping. This is ridiculous, she whispered, trying to take off the coat. But the moment she touched it, he took her wrist, gently, yet possessively, stopping her. Come with me, he said. What? Why would I go anywhere with you? Because you're not okay alone. His grip tightened just enough to warn but not hurt. And I'm not leaving you here. Rachel stepped back. I don't even know you. I know, he said, voice deep and almost serene. But I know myself. I don't walk away from people at the edge. Before she could argue, he took the smallest step closer, still calm, still composed, but something in his aura shifted. Less gentle. More, claiming. And I'm not risking you going back to stand there again. She froze. You can't just take me. I can, he replied smoothly. And I will. Unless you want to test how stubborn I can be. Her pulse jumped. Who is this man? Who are you? She whispered. Kang Seon-woo. His eyes didn't leave hers. And from now until I decide otherwise, you are coming with me. There was no threat in his tone, yet the authority behind it felt absolute. Rachel swallowed, torn between fear, confusion, and a strange, warm shock under her ribs. You're serious? Completely. Why? You don't know me. You don't even know my name. He looked at her for a long, heavy second. I don't need to know your name to want you safe, he said finally. But I want to know it. Rachel, she whispered. Rachel, he repeated, almost tasting the sound of it. Good. Then, with a steady, unstoppable confidence, he guided her toward the car. Rachel hesitated only once, looking back at the river. Not because she had wanted to jump, but because this stranger, this powerful man, had shifted her entire night in a direction she couldn't predict. Don't look back, Seon-woo said quietly. She looked at him. Because you're not going back there again. Something in his tone, a mix of possession, belief, and quiet intensity, made the air thicken. Rachel wasn't sure why she let him open the car door for her. She wasn't sure why she stepped in. Maybe it was shock. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe the way his presence felt like dangerous safety. Or maybe because deep down, she sensed that wherever this man was taking her, her life would never return to normal again. He settled into the driver's seat, eyes cold and focused as he pulled away from the river. She didn't know it yet, but she had just been taken, not kidnapped, not forced, but claimed by a man who didn't let go. And Kang Seon-woo, Seoul's most feared businessman, had never been the type to give back what he decided was his. The Maybach glided through Seoul's late-night streets with a silence that felt almost oppressive. Rachel sat very still in the passenger seat, Seon-woo's coat still wrapped around her shoulders, her mind racing to catch up with what had just happened. The leather seats smelled expensive, like money and power and a life so far removed from hers that they might as well have been from different planets. She watched the city slide past through tinted windows, the familiar streets of Seoul looking strange and new from inside this cocoon of luxury. Her fingers gripped the edge of the seat, knuckles white, as she tried to decide if she should be terrified or something else. Something she couldn't quite name. "Where are you taking me?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Somewhere safe," Seon-woo replied, his eyes never leaving the road. His hands on the steering wheel were steady, controlled, like everything else about him. "That's not an answer. It's the only one you need right now." Rachel's breath hitched. She should demand he stop the car. Should insist he let her out. Should do 100 things that a rational person would do when a stranger had essentially abducted them from a bridge. But exhaustion had made her judgment fuzzy, and something about his absolute certainty was almost comforting. Like he'd taken the weight of decision-making off her shoulders, and she was too tired to fight for it back. "I really wasn't going to jump," she said again, needing him to understand. "I was just standing there, thinking." "What were you thinking about?" The question surprised her with its gentleness. Rachel looked at his profile, the strong jawline, the focused eyes, the way streetlights intermittently illuminated his features in flashes of gold and shadow. "About how I came to Korea 3 years ago with so many plans," she heard herself say. "About how none of them worked out the way I expected. About how I have 3 weeks left on my visa and nowhere to go and no money to get there." She laughed, a bitter sound. "About how I'm 27 and feel like I've already failed at life." Seon-woo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried an edge of something dark, something knowing. "Failure isn't falling down. It's staying down." He glanced at her briefly. "You're still standing. That means you haven't failed." "I was standing on a bridge in the middle of the night crying." "But you were standing." Rachel didn't know what to say to that. She turned back to the window, watching as they entered a neighborhood she recognized as Cheongdam-dong, one of Seoul's wealthiest areas. The buildings grew taller, sleeker, more expensive with each block. "You live here?" she asked, though the answer was obvious. "Yes, of course you do." She shook her head. "What do you do to afford all this?" "I solve problems." "That's vague." "It's intentional." The car descended into an underground parking garage, security gates opening automatically as they approached. Seon-woo's parking spot was marked with his name in elegant Korean characters, flanked by other luxury vehicles that probably cost more than most people made in a decade. He parked with precise efficiency, killed the engine, and turned to face her fully for the first time since they'd gotten in the car. In the dim garage lighting, his eyes were almost black, unreadable and intense. "Rachel," he said, and the way he spoke her name sent a shiver down her spine. "I'm going to take you upstairs. I'm going to give you food, a place to sleep, and safety. In the morning, we'll talk about what comes next. But tonight, I just need you to trust me enough to accept help. And if I say no, then I'll take you wherever you want to go." His expression didn't change. "But I'd rather you said yes." There was something in his tone, not quite a plea, not quite a command, that made her heart do something complicated in her chest. Rachel studied his face, trying to read the man behind the controlled exterior. He was dangerous, she could sense that much. But dangerous to her? Her instincts, usually reliable, were sending mixed signals. "One night," she said finally. "And then you let me go." Something flickered in Seon-woo's eyes, satisfaction, relief, something darker she couldn't identify. "One night," he agreed, though the way he said it sounded like a promise of something more. They took an elevator that required both a key card and fingerprint scan, security measures that made Rachel's pulse quicken with new anxiety. The elevator was all mirrors and soft lighting, playing quiet jazz that did nothing to ease the tension thrumming between them. Rachel caught sight of herself in the mirrors and almost didn't recognize the woman staring back. She looked exhausted, fragile, lost. Seon-woo's coat dwarfed her frame, making her appear even smaller next to his tall, solid presence. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse that took Rachel's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Seoul's glittering nightscape. The space was enormous, open-concept living area with furniture that looked like it belonged in a design magazine, a kitchen with top-of-the-line appliances, art on the walls that might have been originals. This is... Rachel stepped out slowly, turning in a circle. This is insane. It's home, Seon-woo said simply, as if penthouses overlooking Seoul were perfectly normal. He moved past her into the kitchen. Are you hungry? Rachel's stomach chose that moment to growl, answering for her. She realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten properly. Yesterday morning? The day before? I'll take that as a yes. There was the barest hint of amusement in his voice. He moved through the kitchen with surprising confidence, pulling ingredients from a refrigerator that was better stocked than most restaurants. Rachel perched uncertainly on one of the bar stools, watching as he began preparing food with the same precise efficiency he applied to everything. You cook? She asked. When necessary. Is anything about you straightforward? No. He glanced at her, and this time there was definitely amusement in his eyes. Would you prefer it if I were? I'd prefer to understand what's happening. What's happening, Seon-woo said, his knife moving through vegetables with practiced precision, is that I saw someone who needed help, and I'm helping them. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. Except it is more complicated. You don't just pick up strangers and bring them home. I don't, usually. He paused, considering. But you're not just a stranger. We literally met an hour ago. Time isn't always the measure of connection. Rachel had no response to that. She watched him cook, some kind of stir-fry that smelled incredible, and tried to organize her chaotic thoughts. This was insane. All of it. She should be terrified. Should be planning her escape. Should be doing anything except sitting here in a stranger's kitchen, wrapped in his expensive coat, letting him feed her. But beneath the fear and confusion, there was something else. A tiny spark of something that felt almost like hope. Or maybe just the relief of having someone else take charge for a moment, of not having to be strong when she had nothing left to be strong with. Seon-woo plated the food and set it in front of her, perfectly arranged, restaurant quality. He poured water from a filter system that probably cost more than her monthly rent and settled onto the stool beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Eat, he said softly. Rachel picked up the chopsticks with trembling hands and took a bite. The food was delicious, and she was hungrier than she'd realized. She ate quickly, forgetting her manners in the face of genuine hunger, and Seon-woo watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. When did you last eat? He asked after a few minutes. Rachel swallowed. Yesterday morning. Maybe the morning before. I'm not sure. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Why? Because groceries cost money I don't have. Your job. Gone. The Hagwon closed 2 months ago. I've been applying everywhere since. She laughed bitterly. 6 interviews, 6 rejections. The 7th rejection came yesterday afternoon, which is why I was at the bridge. I needed to think. To figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do now. Seon-woo was silent, but Rachel could feel him processing, calculating. She kept eating, suddenly desperate to fill the hollow feeling inside her that wasn't entirely about food. Your visa, he asked finally. Tied to employment. I have about 3 weeks before it expires. Then I either find work or go home to Nigeria. You don't want to go back. It wasn't a question, but Rachel answered anyway. No, but I'm starting to think I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Not when you've run out of options and money. Seon-woo turned on his stool to face her fully, his dark eyes intense and focused. Stay here. Rachel's chopsticks clattered against the plate. What? Stay here. Until you figure things out. Until your situation stabilizes. I can't just move in with a stranger. Why not? Because that's insane. Because I don't know you. Because you've been taught that accepting help is weakness, Seon-woo interrupted gently. But it's not. It's survival. And right now, you need to survive more than you need pride. Rachel stared at him, her heart pounding. Why would you do this? You don't know me. My problems aren't your problems. They are now. His voice carried that same absolute certainty that had marked everything he'd said since they met. I saw you on that bridge and I made a decision. I don't walk away from my decisions, Rachel. This is crazy. Probably. He reached out and tucked a stray braid behind her ear, the gesture intimate and possessive. But I've been called worse things than crazy. Rachel's breath caught at the casual touch, at the way his fingers lingered just a moment too long. There was something in his eyes, something dark and intense and completely focused on her, that made her pulse race for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. What do you want from me? She whispered. For you to be safe. For you to not stand on any more bridges. For you to accept help when it's offered. His thumb brushed across her cheek. That's all. For now. The "for now" hung between them, heavy with implication. And if I say yes? If I stay? Then you stay as long as you need. No obligations, no expectations beyond basic respect and honesty. There's always expectations. Not with me. Seon-woo's hand fell away from her face, but his eyes never left hers. I don't need anything from you except the knowledge that you're okay. Rachel wanted to believe him. Wanted to accept the lifeline he was offering. But years of independence, of fighting her own battles, made the words stick in her throat. I can't pay rent, she said finally. I can't contribute to groceries. I have maybe 200,000 to my name. I'm not asking you to pay me. Then what are you asking? Just to stay. Just to let me help until you can stand on your own again. Tears pricked at Rachel's eyes, exhaustion and emotion overwhelming her carefully maintained composure. Why are you being so nice to me? Seon-woo was quiet for a long moment, something complicated moving across his features. When he spoke, his voice was low and honest in a way that felt like a confession. Because I've stood where you were standing. Not literally, but I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning while everyone around you breathes easy. I know what it's like to need help and be too proud or too scared to ask for it. His eyes held hers with burning intensity. And I promised myself that if I ever had the power to help someone in that position, I would. So here we are. Rachel's tears spilled over, tracking down her cheeks in hot lines. She tried to wipe them away, embarrassed, but Seon-woo caught her hand. Don't, he said softly. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to break down. You're allowed to not be strong every single second. And that simple permission broke something loose inside her. Rachel sobbed, the kind of deep, body-shaking sobs that had been building for months. All the fear, all the exhaustion, all the crushing weight of trying to survive in a country that wasn't hers with resources that weren't enough came pouring out. Seon-woo pulled her into his arms without asking, and Rachel let herself be held by this stranger who somehow felt less like a stranger than anyone she'd met in 3 years in Korea. He was solid and warm and steady, and he held her while she fell apart without saying anything, without trying to fix it, just offering silent support while she cried herself empty. When the tears finally subsided, Rachel pulled back mortified. I'm sorry. I don't usually. Stop apologizing. Seon-woo's voice was firm but gentle. You're exhausted and overwhelmed. Crying is a reasonable response. I got your shirt wet. I have others. Rachel laughed wetly, wiping at her eyes. This is so embarrassing. It's human. He stood and got her a glass of water, pressing it into her hands. Drink. Then I'll show you where you can sleep. Rachel drank obediently, her throat raw from crying. When she finished, Seon-woo led her down a hallway to a guest room that was larger than her entire office style. The bed looked impossibly comfortable, covered in soft gray sheets. The attached bathroom was pristine, stocked with unopened toiletries. Everything you need should be here, Seon-woo said from the doorway. If not, my room is at the end of the hall. Don't hesitate to wake me. Thank you, Rachel whispered, overwhelmed all over again. For all of this. I don't understand why, but thank you. Seon-woo studied her for a long moment, something indecipherable in his expression. Get some sleep, Rachel. We'll talk more in the morning. He started to close the door, then paused. Rachel? Yes, I meant what I said. You're safe here. I promise you that. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut softly behind him, leaving Rachel alone in the beautiful room with her chaotic thoughts. She should be planning her escape. Should be suspicious of his motives. Should be doing anything except what she actually did, which was shower in the expensive bathroom, put on one of the oversized shirts she found in the drawers, and climb into the impossibly comfortable bed. As she drifted off to sleep faster than she had in months, Rachel's last coherent thought was that Kang Seon-woo was either going to save her or destroy her. And she was too tired to care which. The morning sun streaming through unfamiliar windows woke Rachel slowly. For a confused moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was too comfortable, the room too quiet, everything too perfect. Then memory supplied the answer, and she sat up with a start, heart racing. Last night. The bridge. Seon-woo. The penthouse. She'd actually done it. She'd let a complete stranger bring her home. Rachel grabbed her phone from the nightstand, seeing multiple notifications. Messages from her friend Yuna asking if she was okay. An email from her landlord about overdue rent. A rejection from yet another job application that must have come in overnight. Reality crashing back in. She got up and used the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face and avoiding her reflection because she wasn't ready to confront whatever she'd see there. Then, because she couldn't hide forever, she ventured out into the apartment. The smell of coffee guided her to the kitchen, where she found Seon-woo sitting at the breakfast bar with a laptop, dressed in black pants and a fitted white shirt that made him look every inch the powerful businessman. He looked up as she approached, his eyes doing that quick assessment she was beginning to recognize. You slept, he observed. I did. Rachel hovered at the edge of the kitchen, suddenly uncertain. In the harsh light of morning, last night's decisions seemed reckless. Thank you for everything. But I should probably go. Have coffee first, Seon-woo interrupted, already pouring a cup from an expensive-looking machine. Then we'll talk. It was that tone again, not quite a command, not quite a request, but something that made her feet move toward the bar stool before she'd consciously decided to comply. He set the coffee in front of her, perfect temperature, perfect strength, along with a plate of fresh fruit and pastries that looked bakery-bought. You went out, she asked. I had them delivered. Of course he did. Rachel sipped the coffee and tried to organize her thoughts. Listen, I really appreciate what you did last night. Taking me in, feeding me, giving me a place to sleep. But I can't take advantage of your kindness. It's not kindness, Seon-woo said calmly. It's a decision I made. And I'd like you to stay. I can't just move in with a stranger. We're not strangers anymore. We've shared a meal and a morning. That's something. He set down his coffee cup and turned to face her fully. Rachel, I'm going to be direct with you. You have no job, no money, a landlord demanding rent you can't pay, and 3 weeks until your visa expires. Those are facts. Also facts. I have space, resources, and the ability to help. The logical solution is for you to stay here until your situation improves. Life isn't that simple. It could be. What do you get out of this? Rachel asked bluntly. Nobody helps strangers out of pure altruism. What's your angle? Seon-woo was quiet for a moment, something moving behind his dark eyes. Peace of mind. The knowledge that you're not standing on bridges anymore. The satisfaction of being able to help someone who needs it. He paused. Is that not enough? It's too much. It's 1 week, he interrupted. Stay for 1 week. Let me help you figure out the visa situation, the job situation. If after a week you want to leave, I'll drive you wherever you want to go. No arguments, no pressure. But give it 1 week. Rachel stared at him, her mind racing through options. She could go back to her office cell, try to scrape together rent somehow, continue the desperate job search alone. Or she could accept help from this strange, intense man who'd inserted himself into her life with absolute certainty. Pride said to refuse. Practicality said to accept. Exhaustion made the decision for her. 1 week, she said finally. And then we reassess. Satisfaction flickered across Seon-woo's features. 1 week. I need to get my things from my office still. We'll go today. And I need to keep looking for jobs. I can't just exist here doing nothing. Agreed. You can use my office, my computer, whatever resources you need. Rachel nodded slowly, still not entirely convinced she was making the right decision, but too tired to fight anymore. Okay. 1 week. Seon-woo's expression softened fractionally, not quite a smile, but close. Finish your breakfast. Then we'll get your things. They drove to Hongdae in comfortable silence, Seon-woo navigating the morning traffic with the same controlled precision he applied to everything. Rachel watched Seoul slide past the window and tried not to think too hard about what she was doing. Her office style looked even more depressing in daylight, a cramped building in a maze of identical cramped buildings, nothing like the gleaming tower Seon-woo lived in. They climbed 3 flights of narrow stairs, and Rachel felt self-conscious as she unlocked her door, knowing what he'd see. The space was tiny. 1 room with a bed, a desk, a kitchenette barely worthy of the name. The wallpaper was peeling. The light flickered. Her few possessions were scattered with the carelessness of depression. I know it's not much, Rachel said quietly. It's fine, Seon-woo replied, stepping inside and looking around with no judgment in his expression. Where are your bags? She pulled 2 battered suitcases from under the bed, the same ones she'd arrived in Korea with 3 years ago. Packing was quick and depressing. Her entire life in Korea fit into 2 suitcases and a backpack. Clothes, a few books, her laptop, documents. 20 minutes and she was done. Is this everything? Seon-woo asked. That's it. He picked up both suitcases like they weighed nothing and headed for the door. Rachel took one last look around the tiny space that had been home, feeling a complicated mix of sadness and relief. Rachel, Seon-woo's voice came from the doorway. Ready? She grabbed her backpack and followed him out, pulling the door closed with a soft click that sounded like an ending. As they loaded her things into his car, Rachel's phone buzzed. A message from her landlord, angry, demanding overdue rent. Her stomach clenched with anxiety. What is it? Seon-woo asked, reading her expression. Landlord. Wanting rent I don't have. How much do you owe? $1,000,001. 2 months' worth. Seon-woo pulled out his phone without hesitation. What's his number? What? No, you can't. I can and will. Number. Seon-woo, that's too much. Rachel. He looked at her with those intense eyes. You're staying with me now. That means I handle things like this. Number. She should have argued more. Should have maintained her independence. But the relief of having this burden lifted was too overwhelming. She gave him the number. Seon-woo made a call in rapid Korean, too fast for Rachel to follow entirely, but she caught enough. Transfer. Payment. Lease termination. Within 5 minutes, it was handled. Done, he said, sliding his phone back into his pocket. Your landlord is paid, your lease is terminated, and you're officially moved out. Rachel's phone buzzed a moment later, a message from her landlord confirming payment received, lease ended, no balance owed. You just paid $1,000,001 for me, she said numbly. Yes. That's too much. I'll pay you back. No, you won't. His voice was firm. Consider it handled. One less thing for you to worry about. Rachel felt tears threatening again. Why are you doing all this? Seon-woo was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. Because I can. Because you need help. Because. He trailed off, then shook his head. Let's go home. Home. The word sent a strange flutter through Rachel's chest. They drove back to Gangnam, and Rachel tried to process how much her life had changed in less than 24 hours. Yesterday, she'd been standing on a bridge, drowning in hopelessness. Today, she was being driven through Seoul in a luxury car by a man who'd just casually paid off her debts like it was nothing. Back at the penthouse, Seon-woo carried her suitcases to the guest room, her room now, apparently. Unpack. Make yourself comfortable. This is your space. What are you going to do? I have some calls to make. I'll be in my office. He paused in the doorway. Rachel? Yes. You're safe here. I need you to believe that. I'm trying to. He nodded and left, closing the door softly behind him. Rachel unpacked slowly, hanging her shabby clothes in a closet that was bigger than her old bathroom, arranging her few belongings in drawers that had probably never been used. Everything she owned looked wrong in the space, too cheap, too worn, too obviously not belonging. When she was done, she sat on the bed and pulled out her laptop, determined to at least try to do something productive. Job applications. Visa research. Something to prove she wasn't just taking advantage of Seon-woo's generosity. She worked through the afternoon, applying to every position she was even remotely qualified for, researching visa options, sending out inquiries. Seon-woo appeared occasionally, bringing her lunch, asking if she needed anything, but mostly left her alone. By evening, Rachel was exhausted again, this time from mental rather than physical strain. She emerged from her room to find Seon-woo in the kitchen, preparing dinner with the same precise efficiency as the night before. "I'm making bibimbap," he said without looking up. "Sit." Rachel sat, watching him cook. There was something meditative about the way he moved, something calming about being in his presence. It didn't make sense, she barely knew him, but she felt safer here than she had anywhere in months. "How was the job search?" he asked, arranging vegetables in a bowl with artful precision. "Depressing. I applied to 12 positions. I'll probably hear back from 0. "Why do you say that?" "Because that's been my experience. I'm a Nigerian woman in Korea with a soon-to-expire visa. Not exactly what employers are looking for." Seon-woo set the bowl in front of her, then settled onto the stool beside her with his own. "Then we'll figure out another option." "There isn't another option. Either I find a job that will sponsor a visa, or I go home. Or you stay here while we figure something else out." Rachel looked at him sharply. "I can't just stay here indefinitely." "Why not?" "Because that's not how life works. I can't just be your charity case." "You're not a charity case." Seon-woo's voice was calm but firm. "You're someone I care about who needs help. There's a difference. You barely know me. I know enough." Rachel shook her head, mixing her bibimbap with more force than necessary. "This doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. Why do you care?" Seon-woo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and honest. "Because when I saw you on that bridge, something in me recognized something in you. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe the exhaustion. Maybe just the fact that you were fighting so hard to hold on when everything was telling you to let go." He paused. "I couldn't walk away then, and I can't walk away now." Rachel's throat tightened. "That's not a good enough reason to reorganize your entire life for a stranger. You're not a stranger anymore. We've known each other for one day." "Time isn't always the measure of connection," Seon-woo said, echoing his words from the night before. "Sometimes you just know." "Know what?" He looked at her with those intense dark eyes, and Rachel's breath caught at what she saw there, something possessive and gentle and absolutely certain. "That you're supposed to stay." The air between them felt charged, electric with tension that wasn't quite fear but wasn't quite safe either. Rachel's heart hammered against her ribs as she held his gaze, unable to look away. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "Then let me." The invitation hung between them, heavy with possibility. Rachel should say no. Should maintain distance. Should remember that this was temporary, that she couldn't let herself get attached to a man who'd picked her up off a bridge barely more than 24 hours ago. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, "Okay." Satisfaction flickered through Seon-woo's expression. "Okay." They ate in charged silence, the air thick with things unsaid. When they were done, Seon-woo cleaned up with efficient movements while Rachel sat at the counter, too aware of him moving through the space. "I'm going to work in my office for a while," he said finally. "But if you need anything, don't hesitate." "What kind of work do you do?" Rachel asked. "You said import and export, but that's vague." "It's intentionally vague." "Why?" Seon-woo turned to face her, something serious in his expression. "Because the specifics might make you uncomfortable." "Are you doing something illegal?" "I operate in gray areas." Rachel's stomach clenched. "What kind of gray areas?" "The kind that exist between what's technically legal and what's not." He held her gaze steadily. "I'm not a good man, Rachel. I want you to understand that. I have power because I'm willing to do things others won't. I have money because I'm good at navigating spaces where the rules are flexible." Rachel's mouth went dry. Are you dangerous? Yes. To me? Never. The word came out hard, absolute, unquestionable. To you, never. But to others when necessary, yes. She should be terrified. Should be grabbing her things and running. But instead, she found herself asking, what exactly do you do? Seon-woo moved closer, his expression serious. I run an organization that handles problems for people who can afford our services. Sometimes that means facilitating business deals that need discretion. Sometimes it means retrieving things that went missing. Sometimes it means convincing people to make certain decisions. He paused. I'm telling you this because you deserve honesty. But I'm also telling you that none of it will ever touch you. You're separate from that world. How can I be separate if I'm living in your home? Because I keep my worlds divided. What I do out there, he gestured vaguely toward the windows, stays out there. This space, this home, you're untouchable. Protected. Safe. Rachel processed this, her mind racing. She should leave. Should run from this dangerous man and his dangerous life. But when she looked into his eyes, all she saw was honesty and that strange, fierce protectiveness that had been there since the bridge. Why are you telling me this? She asked quietly. Because I don't want lies between us. Because you asked. Because you deserve to know who you're staying with. His eyes held hers. And because I'm hoping you'll stay anyway. That's a lot to ask. I know. Rachel stood up, needing to pace, needing to think. She walked to the massive windows overlooking Seoul, pressing her hands against the cool glass. Behind her, she could feel Seon-woo waiting, patient in the way predators were patient. You saved me, she said finally, not turning around. Last night, you thought I was going to jump, and you stopped me. You brought me here, fed me, paid my debts, offered me safety. Why would someone who does dangerous things care so much about one stranger? Because everyone has lines they won't cross, Seon-woo said quietly, and she heard him move closer. And innocent people's suffering is mine. I do what I do in a world where everyone involved knows the rules, knows the risks. But you were just trying to survive. There's nothing fair about your situation. Nothing you did to deserve drowning in circumstances beyond your control. Rachel turned to face him. He'd stopped a few feet away, maintaining distance, giving her space to process. What if I can't handle this? She whispered. What if knowing what you do makes it impossible for me to stay? Something painful flickered across Seon-woo's features. Then I'll take you wherever you want to go, and I'll make sure you have enough money to start over somewhere safe. But I hope you'll stay. Why does it matter so much to you? Because he stopped, jaw tightening as he struggled with words. Because I've spent 15 years building walls around myself. Becoming colder, harder, more controlled. I stopped feeling things deeply because feeling things was a weakness I couldn't afford. And then I saw you on that bridge and something in those walls cracked. Something I thought was dead woke up. I can't explain it better than that. Rachel's breath caught. That's not fair. You can't say things like that to someone you just met. I know. But it's true. He took a step closer. I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to help you. To keep you safe. To watch you find your footing again. That's all. That's not all. You just said. I said I care about you. That's true. But I'm patient, Rachel. I can care about you from a distance if that's what you need. I can be whatever you need me to be, as long as you stay safe. Tears pricked at Rachel's eyes again, overwhelmed by the intensity of his honesty. I don't know what to do with this. With you. This is all too much, too fast. Then we slow down. Seon-woo's voice was gentle. One day at a time. You stay, you look for work, you figure out your next steps. I provide space and resources and help when you need it. We don't have to define anything beyond that. And your business? Your dangerous life stays completely separate from you. You'll never be involved, never be at risk. I swear that to you. Rachel studied his face, searching for lies and finding none. Just fierce honesty and that possessive protectiveness that should scare her but somehow didn't. 1 week, she said finally. You promised me 1 week to decide. I need that time to think. To process all of this. You have it, Seon-woo agreed immediately. No pressure. No expectations. Rachel nodded slowly, exhausted all over again. I think I need to sleep. Today has been a lot. Of course. He stepped back, creating space. "Good night, Rachel." "Good night." She fled to her room, closing the door and leaning against it, her heart pounding. What was she doing? Staying with a dangerous man who'd admitted to operating outside the law, who'd somehow decided she was worth protecting, who looked at her like she was something precious he'd found and intended to keep. It was insane. All of it. But as Rachel climbed into the comfortable bed and pulled the expensive sheets around her, she couldn't deny one simple truth. She felt safer here than she had anywhere in 3 years in Korea. And maybe that was worth the risk. The next 5 days developed a rhythm that felt both natural and surreal. Rachel woke each morning to find Seon-woo already up, coffee made, breakfast prepared or ordered. They'd eat together, talking about safe topics, the weather, Seoul's neighborhoods, books they'd read. Then Seon-woo would disappear into his office for his mysterious business, while Rachel spent hours applying for jobs, researching visa options, trying to solve the puzzle of her future. Sometimes men in expensive suits would arrive, speaking in low tones with Seon-woo behind closed doors. Sometimes his phone would ring with calls he'd taken Korean too rapid and specialized for Rachel to follow. Sometimes he'd leave for a few hours, returning with that controlled expression that revealed nothing about where he'd been or what he'd done. But with her, he was gentle, patient, present in a way that made Rachel feel seen for the first time in months. They started having dinner together on the third night, Seon-woo cooking elaborate meals while Rachel watched and asked questions. She learned he'd taught himself to cook after his mother died when he was 19. Learned his father had built the foundation of his current business, but had run it poorly, leaving Seon-woo to rebuild everything at 23. Learned he had no siblings, no close family, just the organization he'd built and the men who were loyal to him. "Don't you get lonely?" Rachel asked on the fourth night, watching him dice vegetables with practiced precision. "I used to," Seon-woo replied. "Then I got used to it. And then it became preferable to letting people close enough to disappoint me." "That's sad." "It's practical. It's lonely." He glanced at her, something vulnerable flickering across his features. "Yes, it is." "Is that why you brought me here?" "Because you were lonely?" Seon-woo was quiet for a long moment, his knife stilling on the cutting board. "Maybe partially. But mostly because I couldn't stand the thought of you being alone in yours." The honesty of it made Rachel's chest tight. On the fifth night, she couldn't sleep again. She'd been having vivid dreams, anxiety about her visa, about her future, about what would happen when the week ended and she had to decide. She gave up around 2 a.m. and padded out to the kitchen for water. Seon-woo was there, standing by the windows in sleep pants and a black t-shirt, holding a glass of whiskey and staring out at Seoul's nightscape. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning. "Apparently it's contagious," Rachel replied, getting water from the refrigerator. "Worried about something specific?" "Everything. The week is almost up. I haven't found a job. My visa situation hasn't improved. I'm no closer to having a solution than I was 5 days ago. So stay longer." Rachel moved to stand beside him at the window, maintaining a careful distance. "I can't just live here indefinitely." "Why not?" "Because it's your home. Because I have nothing to offer in return. Because you're scared," Seon-woo interrupted gently. "Not of me, but of letting yourself accept help. Of letting yourself depend on someone." Rachel's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "It's true though, isn't it?" He turned to face her, setting his glass down. "You've been on your own for so long, fighting so hard to be independent, that accepting help feels like failure. It feels like weakness." "It's not." Seon-woo stepped closer, close enough that Rachel had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Strength is knowing when you need help and accepting it. Weakness is suffering alone out of pride." "You make it sound simple." "It could be." His hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek with gentle possession. "Stay, Rachel." "Not for a week. Not for a month. Stay until you don't need to anymore. Until you've found your footing and built something stable. Let me help you do that." Rachel's breath caught, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. "Why do you care so much?" "Be honest." "Not the noble reasons about helping people. The real reason." Seon-woo's expression shifted, something raw and honest breaking through his usual control. Because when I saw you on that bridge, something in me recognized something in you. We're the same, you and I. We've both been fighting alone for so long that we forgot what it feels like to let someone else carry part of the weight. His thumb traced her jaw slowly. Because you're beautiful and strong and stubborn, and watching you refuse to give up despite everything makes me want to give you the world. Because in 5 days, you've become the best part of my day, and the thought of you leaving makes me want to lock all the doors and refuse to let you go. Rachel's pulse hammered. That's intense. I'm an intense person. He didn't move back, didn't give her space. I told you I'm not a good man, Rachel. Good men don't feel possessive about women they just met. Good men don't want to keep people who should probably run from them. But I want to keep you anyway. You can't just keep people, Rachel whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. I know. Which is why I'm asking instead of taking. His eyes searched hers. Stay. Let me take care of you until you can take care of yourself. Let me be selfish and have you here in my space, where I know you're safe and fed and okay. And what do? Just exist here as your what? Your project. My friend. My guest. Eventually, maybe something more if you want that. But only if you want it. His hand fell away from her face. I'm not asking for anything except your presence, Rachel. Everything else is up to you. Rachel stared at him, her mind racing. She should say no. Should maintain boundaries. Should protect herself from getting tangled up with this dangerous, intense man who looked at her like she was something precious. But she was so tired of protecting herself. So tired of being alone. What if it doesn't work? She asked quietly. What if we drive each other crazy? What if? Then we figure it out, Seon-woo interrupted. But we figure it out together instead of you figuring it out alone. I'm scared. I know. His voice was gentle. But you don't have to be scared alone anymore. Something in Rachel broke, some last wall of resistance that had been holding her together through months of struggle. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll stay. Seon-woo's expression transformed relief and satisfaction, and something deeper that made Rachel's stomach flutter. He pulled her into his arms, and she let herself be held while she cried again, releasing months of tension and fear and loneliness. Thank you, he murmured against her hair. Thank you for trusting me. Don't make me regret it, Rachel said, her voice muffled against his chest. I won't. I swear to you I won't. They stood there for long minutes, soul glittering below them, holding each other in the quiet darkness. And for the first time in longer than Rachel could remember, she felt like maybe everything would be okay. Over the next 3 weeks, Rachel's life transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined. Seon-woo hired an immigration lawyer who found a solution to her visa problem, a specialized visa category for people with unique skills that Rachel barely understood, but that somehow applied to her teaching background and language abilities. The lawyer, expensive and competent, handled everything with efficiency that made Rachel's previous struggles seem almost ridiculous. How much did that cost? Rachel asked when Seon-woo told her the visa was approved. Don't worry about it. I am worried about it. I can't let you keep paying for everything. Rachel. He looked at her with patient exasperation. I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. Letting you stress about costs when I can solve problems with a phone call makes no sense. Let me help. Please. So she did, though it made her uncomfortable. But with the visa secured, she could breathe again. Could start thinking about the future instead of just surviving the present. She found a job, too, not teaching this time, but working remotely for an international company that needed someone fluent in English and conversational in Korean. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was steady, and it meant she could start contributing to groceries at least. You don't need to, Seon-woo said when she tried to give him money. I want to. Let me have this dignity. He studied her face, then nodded. Okay, if it's important to you. It is. They fell into a comfortable domesticity that felt both strange and natural. Rachel worked from Seon-woo's home office during the day while he handled his mysterious business. They cooked dinner together most nights, trading stories and laughter over wine that cost more than her old weekly grocery budget. They watched movies on his enormous television, sitting close on the couch in a way that felt intimate without crossing any lines. Because they hadn't crossed any lines. Despite the intensity between them, despite the way Seon-woo looked at her sometimes like he wanted to devour her, he never pushed. Never demanded more than she was ready to give. The most they'd shared were brief touches, his hand on her lower back when guiding her through a door, her fingers on his arm when she wanted his attention, the occasional hug that lingered just a moment too long. It was driving Rachel crazy. She caught herself watching him constantly. The way he moved through space with that controlled grace. The way his hands looked holding a knife or a phone or a glass of wine. The way his rare smiles transformed his face from coldly handsome to devastatingly attractive. The way he looked at her like she was the most important thing in any room. "You're staring," Yuna said one afternoon when she'd come over to visit, the first time Rachel had invited her friend to the penthouse. "I'm not," Rachel protested, too quickly. "You absolutely are." Yuna grinned. "And I don't blame you. He's gorgeous in that dangerous, intense way. But Rachel, be careful. Men like that, men with that kind of power, they're complicated." "I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're falling for him pretty hard." Rachel started to deny it, then stopped. "Maybe I am. Is that stupid?" "Not stupid. Just potentially dangerous. You don't even really know what he does." "I know enough." Yuna gave her a long look. "Just promise me you'll be careful. That you won't lose yourself in him." "I promise." But the truth was, Rachel was already half lost. Maybe more than half. Somewhere between the bridge and now, between being saved and being seen, she'd fallen for Kang Seon-woo. For his intensity and his gentleness, his protectiveness and his patience, the way he looked at her like she was worth everything. It terrified her. On the 6-week anniversary of the night he'd found her, not that Rachel was counting, except she absolutely was. Seon-woo came home late. Rachel had already eaten, was curled up on the couch reading when she heard the door open. He looked exhausted in a way she'd never seen before. Not just tired, but worn, something heavy in his expression that made her stomach clench with worry. "Are you okay?" she asked, setting down her book. "Long day," Seon-woo replied, loosening his tie with jerky movements that betrayed his usual control. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No. I just want—" He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "What?" Rachel stood up, moving closer. "What do you want?" He looked at her, and the expression in his eyes made her breath catch. Raw need mixed with careful restraint, want battling with control. "You," he said finally, his voice rough. "I want you. Have wanted you since the bridge. But I promised myself I'd wait until you were ready, until you felt safe enough, until—" Rachel closed the distance between them and kissed him. For a moment, Seon-woo froze, shocked. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close as he kissed her back with an intensity that made her knees weak. It was possessive and gentle and desperate all at once, weeks of tension finally finding release. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Seon-woo rested his forehead against hers. "I'm ready," Rachel whispered. "I've been ready. I was just scared." "Of me? Of this? Of feeling this much for someone I barely know but somehow can't imagine living without?" Seon-woo's arms tightened around her. "You know me better than most people who've known me for years. Time isn't always the measure of connection, remember?" "I remember." Rachel pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I'm falling for you. Maybe I already fell. And that terrifies me, but not enough to make me want to stop." Something fierce and possessive blazed in Seon-woo's expression. "I fell the moment I saw you on that bridge. Everything since then has just been me trying to convince you to fall too." "That's manipulative," Rachel said, but she was smiling. "I told you I'm not a good man." He kissed her again, softer this time. "But I'm yours if you want me." "I want you," Rachel admitted. "God help me, I want you." That night, they crossed every remaining line between them. Seon-woo made love to her with an intensity that felt like claiming, like worship, like he'd been waiting his entire life for her. And Rachel let herself be claimed, let herself fall completely, let herself trust that this dangerous man would keep her safe in all the ways that mattered. Afterward, Lying tangled together in Seon-woo's bed, the first time she'd been in his room, Rachel traced patterns on his chest and tried to process how much her life had changed. "What are you thinking?" Seon-woo asked, his fingers running through her braids with gentle possessiveness. "That's 6 weeks ago. I was standing on a bridge thinking my life was over. And now I'm here with you and everything is different." "Better different?" "Yes. Terrifyingly better." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "You really fell that fast?" "On the bridge. The moment I saw you." His hand came up to cup her face. "Something in me just knew that you were important, that I couldn't walk away, that my life was about to change and I needed to let it. That's not how life works. It's how my life worked." He pulled her down for a kiss. "You appeared when I didn't know I needed someone. And now I can't imagine my life without you in it." Rachel's throat tightened with emotion. "I was so lost. So tired of fighting. And then you just took over. Made decisions when I couldn't. Gave me space to breathe and figure things out. You saved me, Seon-woo. In every way that matters." "You saved yourself," he corrected gently. "I just provided the circumstances that let you do it. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Rachel. You came to a foreign country alone, built a life, survived it falling apart, and you're still standing. That's all you. With your help." "With my help," he conceded. "But you could have done it alone eventually. You just don't have to anymore." Rachel buried her face against his neck, overwhelmed by the intensity of feeling flooding through her. "I love you," she whispered. "That's probably too soon to say, but I do. I love you." Seon-woo's arms tightened around her. "I love you too. Have loved you from the moment you looked at me on that bridge with those exhausted eyes and still had the strength to argue with me. I knew then that you were mine. I just had to wait for you to realize it too." "Possessive much?" "Completely." He rolled them over so he was above her, his eyes dark and intense. "You're mine, Rachel Okafor. Mine to protect. Mine to take care of. Mine to love. And I don't share." "Good," Rachel said, pulling him down for another kiss. "Because I don't either." They made love again, slower this time, learning each other's bodies and boundaries and preferences. And in the quiet hours before dawn, Rachel finally fell asleep wrapped in Seon-woo's arms, feeling safer and more cherished than she'd ever felt in her life. 3 months later, Rachel woke to sunlight streaming through windows that had become familiar, in a bed that had become hers, next to a man who had become her entire world. Seon-woo was already awake, watching her with that intense focus she'd come to love. "Morning," she murmured, stretching. "Morning." He kissed her forehead. "I have something for you. It's not my birthday. Doesn't need to be." He reached into his nightstand and pulled out a small box. Rachel's heart stuttered. "Seon-woo. Open it." Inside was a key, simple, elegant, clearly expensive. And under it, papers she didn't immediately understand. "What is this?" "The deed to this apartment," Seon-woo said calmly. "In your name. And the key is symbolic. You've had access to everything from the beginning, but I wanted you to have something tangible. Proof that this is your home as much as mine." Rachel stared at the papers, her hands trembling. "You put your apartment in my name?" "Our apartment. And yes, that's insane. This place is worth millions. And you're worth more than that to me." He took her hands, his expression serious. "Rachel, I know we've only been together for a few months. I know by conventional standards, this is too fast. But I've never felt conventional about you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. I want you to know you're safe. That you have a home that can't be taken away. That you're not dependent on me staying in your life, even though I have every intention of staying in it forever." Tears spilled down Rachel's cheeks. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay. Say you'll build a life with me. Say you'll let me love you for as long as you'll have me." "Yes," Rachel whispered. "Yes to all of it." Seon-woo kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I should probably tell you something else," he said. "What?" "I've been transitioning my business. Moving away from the gray areas toward more legitimate operations. It'll take a few years to complete, but I want a life I don't have to hide from you. I want our future to be built on something stable." Rachel pulled back to look at him. You're doing that for me? I'm doing it for us. For the life I want to build with you. His thumb wiped away her tears. I was existing before you, Rachel. Just going through motions, building an empire but not knowing what for. And then you appeared, and suddenly everything had purpose. I want to be worthy of you. I want to build something we can both be proud of. I'm already proud of you, Rachel said. You took a broken woman off a bridge and gave her a reason to keep fighting. You showed me what it feels like to be cherished. You gave me a home when I thought I'd lost everything. I don't need you to change your life for me. I'm changing it for us, Seon-woo corrected. For the future we're going to build. For the family we might have someday, if you want that. Rachel's breath caught. Family? Not now. But someday maybe. If you want it. He smiled, that rare expression that transformed his face. I'm patient. I can wait for you to be ready for whatever comes next. Rachel laughed through her tears, overwhelmed by how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she'd been standing on a bridge, drowning in hopelessness. And now she was here, in the arms of a man who loved her enough to reshape his entire world for her, holding a deed to a home she'd never dreamed of having, planning a future she'd thought was impossible. I love you, she said. So much it scares me sometimes. I love you more, Seon-woo replied, pulling her close. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you. That's a long time. Not long enough, he murmured against her hair. Not nearly long enough. They stayed in bed for another hour, talking about the future they'd build together. About Rachel's career aspirations, about Seon-woo's business plans, about traveling and adventures, and all the things they wanted to experience as partners instead of alone. About the possibility of marriage someday, of children maybe, of growing old together in this city that had brought them together. And as Rachel listened to Seon-woo describe the life he wanted to build with her, she marveled at the strange, impossible path that had led her here. How desperation had brought her to a bridge, and a stranger with intense eyes had refused to let her drown. How what she thought was rock bottom had actually been a new beginning. How the worst night of her life had become the catalyst for the best thing that had ever happened to her. What are you smiling about? Seon-woo asked, watching her face. Just thinking about that night. How you misunderstood what I was doing on that bridge. Did I misunderstand? His eyes held hers. Or did I see something you didn't realize was there? You weren't actively trying to die, but you'd stopped actively trying to live. That's its own kind of danger. Rachel considered that. Maybe you're right. Maybe I needed someone to see that I was drowning even when I was still treading water. And now? Now I'm swimming, Rachel said, kissing him softly. Thanks to you. No, Seon-woo corrected, pulling her closer. Thanks to us. Thanks to you being brave enough to accept help. Thanks to both of us being willing to take a chance on something that probably shouldn't work, but somehow does. It does work, doesn't it? Rachel marveled. Against all logic and reason, we work. We do, Seon-woo agreed. And we'll keep working. Whatever challenges come, we'll face them together. Promise? Promise. They sealed it with a kiss that tasted like morning and promises and a future that Rachel had stopped believing in, but had found anyway. And as Seoul woke up outside their windows, beginning another day in the city that had brought them together, Rachel finally understood what it meant to be home. Not a place, though this penthouse with its impossible views had become that. Not circumstances, though her life had stabilized in ways she'd stopped dreaming possible. Home was this. This man who'd seen her at her lowest and decided she was worth saving. This love that had grown from a misunderstanding on a bridge into something solid and real and forever. This partnership built on honesty and trust and the willingness to be vulnerable even when it was terrifying. Home was Seon-woo's arms around her, his heart beating steadily under her palm, his voice murmuring promises against her hair. Home was knowing that no matter what happened, she wouldn't face it alone anymore. Home was love that had started at the edge and built something beautiful from what should have been an ending. I'm glad you stopped that night, Rachel whispered. Even though I wasn't going to jump. I'm glad you stopped and made me get in your car and refused to let me go. I'll never let you go, Seon-woo replied, his voice carrying that absolute certainty she'd learned to trust. You're mine, Rachel. For as long as you'll have me, you're mine. Forever, then, Rachel said, surprising herself with how easily the word came. I'm yours forever. Forever, Seon-woo repeated, like a vow. I'll take it. And there, in the morning light of their shared home, they held each other and planned the future they'd build together. A future that had started at the edge of despair and grown into something neither of them had expected, but both of them needed. Rachel had come to Korea searching for opportunity and adventure. She'd found hardship and struggle instead, had nearly given up, had stood on a bridge wondering if she had the strength to keep fighting. And then a stranger with intense eyes and a possessive heart had refused to walk away. Had claimed her without permission, protected her without asking, loved her before she'd even realized she was falling too. It was crazy. It was improbable. It was the kind of story that shouldn't work in real life. But it did work. Against all odds, it did. And as Rachel drifted back to sleep in Seon-woo's arms, safe and loved and home, she sent a silent thank you to the universe for putting her on that bridge at exactly the right moment to be found by exactly the right person. Sometimes salvation came from the most unexpected places. Sometimes love grew from misunderstandings and mistakes. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives were actually doorways to the best ones. And sometimes, when you were drowning, all you needed was someone stubborn enough to pull you out and patient enough to teach you how to swim again. Rachel had found that someone. And she was never letting him go either. Thanks for watching this interesting episode. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating stories.